From golf pros losing their minds after getting caught cheating, to golf shots so bad they immediately quit playing. These are the most embarrassing moments in golf history. What the f*** are you doing? Not exactly the kind of phrase you expect to hear on a golf course. It's Friday at the 2025 Live Golf Dallas event, and Peters is grouped with his Four Aces teammate Patrick Reed. Yeah, the guy who's been controversial his entire career. The atmosphere is already tense. Reed's trying to focus on his round when some fan in the gallery starts running his mouth. We don't know exactly what was said, but it was enough to get under Reed's skin. And that's when Peters lost his mind. The Belgian golfer, who was already having a terrible day shooting 3 over par, suddenly snapped. But instead of taking his frustration out on his clubs like he's famous for doing, we'll get to that in a minute, he decided to take it out on a spectator. Peters ducked under the gallery rope like he was entering a boxing ring and marched straight toward the stands with his putter in hand. Meanwhile, Reed? He managed to hole his downhill right-to-left slider for par before turning back to stare down the spectator who berated him. The man stayed ice cold while his teammate fought his battles. The whole thing lasted just minutes, but it clearly got to the guy. Peters stumbled through the first round, racking up 4 bogeys and a double bogey. Meanwhile, Reed went on to win the tournament in a playoff, completely unbothered by the drama his teammate had created. Golf fans talk about slow play all the time, but Patrick Cantlay? He plays at one of the slowest paces on the circuit. It drives everyone crazy. And now, he's in real trouble. So, here's what went down. His pre-shot routine involved shuffling his feet a number of different times before ultimately pulling the trigger. And during the final round of the Tour Championship, it got so bad that even the commentators were getting annoyed. There's Cantlay on the tee box doing his thing. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. His waggle is never ending. The cameras keep cutting back to him. Still shuffling, still wagging, still not hitting the ball. Media member Jason Page tweeted, "If you watch, you can actually see the grass growing under Patrick Cantlay's feet." Brutal. That's when Phil Mickelson saw his chance. Now, Phil's not known for staying quiet. The guy loves stirring the pot. But this time, instead of just calling Cantlay slow, he decided to get mathematical about it. He shuffled his right foot 26 times. 26 times before he hit it. 26 times 36 other shots is 936 foot shuffles, Mickelson wrote on X. But wait, there's more where that came from. That's more calf raises than I'll ever do. You also must be in peak physical condition to do this daily, so let's stop all the hate and appreciate that golfers are athletes. The internet exploded. Cantlay, meanwhile, kept doing his thing. "I definitely take my time," he once admitted. When asked about the criticism, he said slow play was more of a tour issue than a player issue. But Phil's burn was perfect. Some golfers break under pressure, others break their clubs. But Anne Van Dam? She broke her driver in the most ridiculous way possible, at the absolute worst moment imaginable. Trust me, you won't ever believe what happened here. Van Dam had just birdied the final hole at Dramaland Castle to get into a playoff with Smilla Tarning-Sonderby and Lisa Pettersson. She was pumped. After a shaky final round, she'd pulled it together when it mattered most. Time for the playoff. So she hopped into a cart with a tournament official to ride back to the 18th tee. Simple enough, right? They decided to cut through the fairway instead of taking the path. The pair went down the fairway instead of a nearby path, but no one could have predicted what happened next. Van Dam, who has 5 LET victories to her name and was eyeing up another, lifted the gallery rope up for the cart to pass under. But it came down around her driver and pulled the bag to the ground. The rope caught her golf bag like a fishing line. But instead of a fish, it snagged her driver and yanked it clean off the cart. Snap. Oh, you could see the rage on her face. Her main driver had already been broken earlier in the week during airline travel. This was her backup. What are the odds? So Van Dam didn't have much choice. She hit the fairway with her 3-wood and followed it up with a good shot, giving herself a chance at birdie. But Sonderby went even bigger. Her shot was amazing, and she made an eagle to win her first Ladies European Tour title. Back in 2004, Hal Sutton was captain of Team USA. He'd got the 2 best golfers on the planet, Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson. What could go wrong? Well, absolutely everything. Hal Sutton thought he was being brilliant. Put the superstars together. Let them destroy Europe. It was supposed to be an easy win, but there was a tiny problem. Tiger and Phil hated each other. Well, maybe not hated, but they weren't exactly best buddies either. Everyone knew this, the press knew it, the players knew it, even the fans knew it. But Sutton? He thought he could fix their relationship with one magical pairing. And it backfired. Spectacularly. They told Tiger and Phil 2 days before the matches started. It was a huge mistake since they've never worked together. In alternate shots, both players had to use the same ball. Tiger played a high spin ball. Phil played a low spin ball. They were total opposites. So what happened? Phil had to learn Tiger's ball in a crash course. While everyone else was practicing and preparing, Phil was off by himself, hitting shots, trying to figure out distances, learning a completely different golf ball. And Tiger wasn't happy about it either. The matches were painful to watch. They lost to Colin Montgomery and Padraig Harrington in the morning, 2-1. Then they lost to Darren Clarke and Lee Westwood in the afternoon, 1 up, 0 points from 2 matches. The Dream Team became a disaster. Europe won that Ryder Cup by 9 points. It was the worst American loss ever, and everyone blamed Sutton for the Tiger-Phil experiment. Next up, Richard Finch was cruising at the 2008 Irish Open. He had a comfortable 3-shot lead heading to the final hole at Adair Manor, looking every bit like a man who was about to win his second European Tour title of the season. The par 5 18th should have been a victory lap, but Finch had other plans that involved getting very, very wet. His tee shot was solid, finding the fairway and setting up a manageable approach to the green. But his second shot didn't cooperate, landing precariously on the rough beside the 18th green, right next to the River Meg that winds its way through the beautiful Irish estate. So, standing on that awkward slope next to the river, with the pressure of winning his first major European event, Finch decided to go for broke. He lined up his third shot, took his stance on the uneven ground, and swung aggressively at the ball. And there he goes. Nothing like a refreshing dip into the cold Irish waters in the middle of a game, right? But hey, good news is that while Finch was thrashing around in the river like a confused salmon, his golf ball had somehow found its way onto the green. Embarrassed as he was, he ended up winning by 2 shots over Felipe Aguilar. Lightning doesn't usually strike twice, but if you're Nelly Korda playing the Evian Championship, apparently it does. If I tell you a fan picked up her golf ball in the middle of a round, again, at the exact same tournament, you'd probably think I am kidding. But I don't. The first incident happened in 2022 during the final round of the Amundi Evian Championship. Korda was making a charge, having started with back-to-back birdies to get into contention for another major title. Then, she hit her approach shot on the par 4 6th hole slightly offline, and her ball rolled into some wood chips along the spectator path beside the trees. Not great, but not a disaster either. Then a lady walks up to her ball, picks it up with a huge smile, and holds it in the air like she just caught a home run at Yankee Stadium. And yeah, it probably wouldn't have been a big deal if we were at a baseball game. But this is golf, and if there's one thing you absolutely cannot do, it's take a player's ball. And now, fast forward to 2025, oh my, history repeated itself in the most ridiculous way possible. During the third round of the same championship, this kid decided to help themselves to one of Korda's golf balls mid-round. Seems like the Evian Championship has some kind of curse for Korda when it comes to fans. Alright, we move to the next one. So, golf can be cruel, we already know that. But what happened to Ricky Fowler at the 2019 Waste Management Phoenix Open was absurd. He had a 4-shot lead heading into Sunday and looked unstoppable until the 11th hole. The trouble started simple enough. His approach shot came up short of the green. No big deal, right? Players chip from there all the time. But it rolled back into the water. He tried again. Same thing happened. So following the rules, he placed the ball on the slope, where it finally stayed put. Then Fowler walked up toward the green to assess his next shot. But as he stood there surveying the situation, his ball, which had been sitting perfectly still, suddenly decided to take a little journey back down the slope and into the water all by itself. Nobody touched it. There was no wind. The ball just rolled back into the hazard like it had a mind of its own. And to make things worse, the rules added insult to injury. Fowler was hit with another penalty stroke for that final roll into the water. He ended up making a triple bogey 7, watching his 5-shot cushion evaporate to just 1 stroke over Brandon Grace. How unlucky can you get? Now let's meet Bernhard Langer, golf's most successful senior player, though he's also golf's most controversial putter, and that's not a coincidence. Back in 2016, the USGA banned anchored putting. For years, players had been pressing long putters against their chest or belly to steady the stroke. The new rule was clear and simple. No anchoring the club to your body. That was a big deal for Langer. He'd struggled with the yips earlier in his career, then found new life in the 1990s by switching to a long putter anchored against his chest. With that setup, he dominated the Champions Tour. When the ban came, most players switched gear or tried new techniques. Not Langer. He made one tiny tweak, just moving his top hand a fraction away from his chest. Problem solved, at least technically. Fans weren't convinced. To many, it still looked like anchoring, especially during clutch putts. His win over Tiger and Charlie Woods at the PNC Championship last year reignited the debate when replays seemed to show, well, classic anchoring. Officials have checked him over and over, and their verdict is always the same: legal. Still, watching him, you get why people feel he's bending the spirit of the rule. Next up, Stephen Gallacher was living a dream moment at the Hero Indian Open. Sitting at 8 under, just 3 shots back, and with his 18-year-old son Jack on the bag, it felt like the perfect Sunday storyline. And then, it all turned into chaos. On the 7th tee, Gallacher pulled his drive left into the thick fescue. Annoying, but nothing unusual. So what's the problem? Well, when he and Jack went to look, the ball had vanished. The rough was so dense it just swallowed it whole. So back to the tee he went, now hitting 3. Surely he'd straighten it out this time. Nope. The ball sailed left again. Same spot, same nightmare. Another search, another lost ball. Back he went, again. By now the crowd must have been cringing for him, and Jack probably wondered if his dad had suddenly forgotten how to play golf. On his 4th try, mercifully, the ball finally found the fairway. But the damage was done. A quadruple bogey 8, 4 tee shots on the same hole, and a feel-good story turned into a viral blooper reel. Right there in front of thousands of fans and the TV cameras. See, some days golf just doesn't love you back. And then we have this guy. Billy Horschel made his first mistake at the 2021 Masters before he even stepped foot on Augusta National. He decided to wear white pants. By the time Saturday's 3rd round rolled around, Horschel was struggling at 4 over par and desperately needed something to go his way. Instead, fate had other plans for him on the famous 13th hole. His approach shot landed in Rays Creek, just short of the green. He saw the ball sitting under a couple of inches of water and thought, why not? So, off came the shoes and socks, up went the pant legs, and in he went barefoot, about to try one of the gutsiest shots at Augusta. The plan? Fine. The execution? A disaster. As he eased toward the ball, the slope betrayed him. His feet slipped, and down he went, landing squarely on his backside. Oh, those gleaming Ralph Lauren whites. Still, he went through with it. From the water, he hacked the ball onto the green and somehow saved par with a 2-putt. He signed for a 73 that day, but the pants? Let's just say they didn't survive Augusta. Alright, we move to the next one. A legend of the game who suddenly found himself counting into double digits on a single hole. The year was 2021 at the Valero Texas Open. Now, Phil's known for his gambling style of play. Sometimes it pays off spectacularly, and sometimes, well, you're about to find out. That day was a beautiful day in San Antonio, Texas. Mickelson standing on the 18th tee, just 2 over par for his round. Not great, but not terrible either. He steps up and absolutely bombs his drive 306 yards right down the middle of the fairway. Perfect position. The gallery's thinking, classic Phil, he's going to make something happen here. But then, everything started unraveling. And when I say unraveling, I mean it was like watching someone try to juggle while riding a unicycle on a tightrope during a hurricane. His second shot? Water. His next attempt? More trouble. Before anyone knew what was happening, golf's greatest showman was putting on a very different kind of show. 1 stroke became 3, became 5, became 7. And finally, in a moment that had statisticians scrambling through the record books, Mickelson tapped in for a 10. Yes, you heard that right. A 10 on a par 5. It was tied for his second highest score ever on the PGA Tour. The crowd fell silent. The commentators were practically speechless. And somewhere, a scorecard was crying. Alright, we move to the next one. Traveling back to 2010 to one of the most pressure-packed situations in golf, the Ryder Cup. Hunter Mahan stood on the 17th hole at Celtic Manor, the hopes of an entire nation resting on his shoulders. The United States needed him to win this match to complete one of the greatest comebacks in Ryder Cup history. The tension was unbearable. Hunter needed to get up and down from just off the green, a shot he'd probably pulled off thousands of times in his career. But this wasn't just any old up and down. This was for Ryder Cup immortality. He settled over the ball, took his stance, and, well, let's just say what happened next probably still gives him nightmares. His chip shot barely left the ground, traveling about as far as a 3-year-old's putt on a mini-golf. On the next hole sealed his fate, and instead of lifting the trophy, he walked off in tied for 4th, empty-handed and visibly fuming. The cringiest part, blaming his own caddy on live TV, turning an already brutal meltdown into one of the most embarrassing moments in golf history. But that's nothing compared to number 20, when CBS broadcaster Gary McCord learned the hard way that at Augusta National, some things are better left unsaid. See, if the Masters tournament is golf's equivalent of a black tie dinner, the Augusta National Golf Club is the Royal Palace, where tradition reigns supreme and every word spoken is expected to match the prestige of the green jacket itself. But in 1994, Gary McCord maybe didn't know that. It started during a late afternoon broadcast. McCord was in the booth, doing his usual colorful commentary, when he spotted an advertisement in a magazine during a commercial break. It was for the Golden Door Spa, listing various treatments, including, of all things, bikini waxes. This gave him an idea for what he thought would be a clever description of Augusta's notoriously slick greens. He said they were so fast, they looked like they'd been bikini waxed. Innocent enough, right? Wrong. The members at Augusta National Golf Club were not amused. But wait, it gets better. He then referred to the mounds behind one of the greens as body bags. That was the final straw. The next thing McCord knew, he was persona non grata at golf's most prestigious event. Banned. Exiled. Never to return to the Masters broadcast booth again. All because of a bikini wax reference and some body bags. That was a tough crowd. We're heading to the 2014 Ryder Cup at Gleneagles, where Patrick Reed turned himself into golf's most daring villain. The story begins on the first tee, where the European crowd was already giving the American rookie a not-so-warm Scottish welcome. "Did you practice your putting stroke, Patrick?" one fan shouted, mocking him for a crucial missed putt from the day before. Now, most first-time Ryder Cup players would have ducked their heads and tried to let their golf do the talking. But Reed? He had other plans. After draining a crucial putt, he didn't just pump his fist or tip his cap. No. He looked straight at the hostile crowd, raised his finger to his lips, and shushed them. The reaction was explosive. The European fans, who already weren't exactly in Reed's fan club, responded with even louder heckling. It was a bold strategy, and it definitely made for some entertaining television, from one cocky, embarrassing player to the other. But this one is even worse. All right, let's move on. If there's one thing Brooks Koepka doesn't lack, it's confidence. Heading into the final round of the 2020 PGA Championship, he let the world know exactly how he felt. Sitting just 2 shots off the lead, Koepka took a moment to subtly throw shade at his competitors, especially Dustin Johnson, pointing out that DJ had only 1 major win compared to Koepka's 4. Translation? I've been here before, these guys haven't. Bold move. Too bold. Because when Sunday rolled around, Brooks' game completely fell apart. Instead of making a charge, he imploded, shooting a brutal 4 over 74, one of the worst scores of the day. Bogeys, missed putts, bad swings, everything that could go wrong did. Meanwhile, Collin Morikawa, one of the young players Brooks had seemingly dismissed, put on an absolute masterclass, closing with a stunning final round 64 to claim his first ever major title. Brooks, he didn't just lose, he tumbled all the way down to tied for 29th. That's right, 29th. Imagine the walk of shame to the clubhouse. Absolutely embarrassing. Moral of the story? If you're going to talk the talk, you better walk the walk. Because in golf, the only thing worse than losing is losing after you trash talk. And here we have what might be one of the greatest putters to ever play the game. This man could drain a 20-footer with his eyes closed. But on one fateful day in 1979, the golf gods decided to humble him in the most brutal way possible. We're talking about Ben Crenshaw. It was the Western Open at Butler National, and Crenshaw stepped onto the 5th green in his first round with a routine 15-foot putt for birdie, a putt he had probably made 1,000 times before. He lined it up, took his signature smooth stroke, and missed. No big deal, right? He had a tap in for par. Except, he missed that one too. Now he had a short bogey putt left, and guess what? He missed that one as well. Panic set in. Crenshaw's putting stroke, normally as pure as a symphony, completely deserted him. 1 miss turned into 2, 2 turned into 3, and suddenly, the unthinkable happened. By the time the ball finally dropped on his 7th putt, the damage was done. A quadruple bogey 8, an entry in the record books for one of the worst putting performances in PGA Tour history, and a moment that would haunt him forever. And the worst part? Crenshaw was so furious that he didn't even bother finishing the round. After just 9 holes, he stormed off the course and withdrew from the tournament. A putting genius, taken down by a single green. We've got Hudson Swafford, and a moment so bizarre it left everyone scratching their heads. It happened during the 2013 Nationwide Children's Hospital Championship on the Corn Ferry Tour. Swafford was in the fairway, preparing for his next shot. Nothing unusual, just a routine practice swing to loosen up. But then, the unexpected happened. As Swafford took his practice swing, he carved out a hefty divot. No big deal, right? Except this divot had a mind of its own. It flew forward and struck his golf ball, causing it to move down the fairway. For a moment, Swafford just stood there, probably thinking, did that really just happen? Yep, it did, Swafford. But here comes the worst part. Hudson was left dealing with one of the most unusual penalties in golf. According to the rules, if a player's actions cause the ball to move, even accidentally, they incur a 1-stroke penalty and must replace the ball to its original position. So not only did Swafford have to swallow the embarrassment of the mishap, but he also had to take a penalty for a practice swing gone horribly wrong. Next up, here we're diving into what might be the most embarrassing press conference in golf history. The 2014 Ryder Cup had just ended. Team USA had lost. Again, and Phil Mickelson decided it was time to air some dirty laundry. The only problem? The team captain, Tom Watson, was sitting right there. You could feel the tension brewing in that media room. Reporters were squirming in their seats. Other players were studying their shoes like they held the secrets to the universe. And there was Phil, calmly and methodically throwing his captain under the bus, over the bus, and then backing the bus up again. When asked about past Ryder Cup successes, Mickelson didn't hold back. Instead of dodging the question, he praised Paul Azinger's 2008 captaincy, the last time Team USA had won, saying, "We had a great formula in 2008. I don't know why we strayed from it." Oof, That was direct, but he wasn't done. Mickelson continued, pointing out how Azinger had empowered players, given them a voice, and built an environment where they could thrive. The unspoken message? Tom Watson did the complete opposite. And Watson? He just sat there, arms crossed, face stone cold, not a single word in response. Even Phil's teammates looked like they wanted to crawl under the table. It was the golf equivalent of watching your parents fight at Thanksgiving dinner. Uncomfortable, unavoidable, and impossible to look away from. It happened at the 2022 Arnold Palmer Invitational on the par 3 7th hole. Nothing crazy, just a routine cleanup job. But then, the unthinkable happened. Rahm had already done the hard part, getting his ball onto the green. Now he was left with a 10-inch putt for par. Not 10 feet, not even 3 feet. 10 inches. The kind of putt you don't even think about. The kind of putt your grandma drains with a shaky old putter. Rahm steps up, barely even setting his feet. He gives the ball the softest tap imaginable. And then, it stops short. From 10 inches, the ball stops short. No one believes what just happened. Rahm just stands there, staring at the ball like it personally betrayed him. He quickly taps in on the next stroke, but by then, it's too late. The damage is done. His whiff of a putt is already immortalized as one of the most humiliating moments in golf history. We're traveling back to 1987, when Craig Stadler learned that sometimes trying to keep your pants clean can cost you a lot more than a dry cleaning bill. It was the San Diego Open at Torrey Pines, and Stadler found himself in a pickle. His ball was under a tree, forcing him to kneel down to make the shot. Now, being the practical fellow that he was, Stadler didn't want to get his white pants dirty. So he did what any sensible person would do. He put a towel down to kneel on. Seems reasonable, right? Well, the rules of golf had other ideas. Little did Stadler know that this simple act of cleanliness would come back to haunt him. A TV viewer, yes, a person watching from their couch actually called in to report that Stadler had violated Rule 13-3, which prohibits building a stance. By the time officials reviewed the footage, Stadler had already signed his scorecard without including the 2-stroke penalty. The result? Disqualification. Over a towel. A towel. Stadler had finished tied for second place, which would have earned him $37,000. Instead, he got nothing, except maybe the cleanest pants in professional golf history. And this one takes us to the 2020 US Open at Winged Foot, where Danny Lee gave us a putting performance that made Ben Crenshaw's 7-putt look almost reasonable. Lee was facing a 4-foot putt for par on the 18th green. Simple enough, right? Wrong. What followed was like watching a horror movie in slow motion. Miss again, and, well, you get the picture. 6 putts later, yes, 6, Lee finally holed out for a quintuple bogey 9, but the drama wasn't over. In a moment of pure frustration that resonated with every weekend golfer who's ever 3-putted from 2 feet, Lee proceeded to slam his putter into his bag with the kind of force usually reserved for heavyweight boxing matches. Then, adding insult to injury, or perhaps injury to insult, he withdrew from the tournament citing a wrist injury. I wonder how that happened. And this one gave us one of the most heartbreaking and embarrassing images in golf history. The 1996 Masters was supposed to be Greg Norman's redemption. After years of Augusta heartbreak, he finally had a 6-shot lead heading into Sunday. A comfortable cushion. Or at least, it should have been. But Augusta doesn't do mercy. Shot by shot, the lead crumbled. Bogeys piled up. Nick Faldo kept the pressure on. And Norman, once fearless and aggressive, looked completely lost. And then came the moment of truth, the moment we all have etched in our heads. The 15th hole. Norman still had a chance. A clutch eagle chip here could swing the momentum, could stop the bleeding, could maybe, just maybe, salvage something from this sinking ship. He took his stance, struck the ball, and watched it slide past the hole. That was it. Something inside him just broke. He dropped to his knees in pure agony. Then, in a gesture of complete surrender, he lay back on Augusta's perfectly manicured turf, arms splayed out, staring up at the Georgia pines. An iconic image for the world, but for Norman, probably the most embarrassing moment of his career. By the time Norman tapped in his final putt, Faldo had turned that 6-shot deficit into a 5-shot victory. And here we are at number 10. Not every unforgettable blunder at the Masters comes from a player. In 2019, a security guard at Augusta National became an accidental star, and not for the best reasons. The incident took place on the 14th hole, a critical point in Tiger Woods' round as he was making his way out of the trees on the left side of the fairway. Woods, having just nailed an impressive shot, was moving along, fully in the zone. But then the unexpected happened. The guard, intending to protect Woods from an enthusiastic crowd, rushed to hold fans back and accidentally slipped on the damp grass. What was supposed to be a quick block turned into a dramatic slide straight toward Woods, his foot nearly colliding with one of the world's most famous golfers. In the heat of the moment, fans could barely believe what they were witnessing. Imagine a crunching tackle more suited to soccer than a golf green. Vinnie Jones himself would have probably given an approving nod to the guard's unintentional move. And let's not forget the split-second horror as people held their breath, hoping the legend wouldn't get hurt. Luckily, Woods emerged unscathed, only needing a moment to shake off the surprise. As the guard awkwardly recovered, Woods simply got back to business and went on to win the Masters that year. Looks like that guard's best save of the day was not injuring Tiger. Too bad not everyone has that amount of luck. Alright, we move to the next one. For a player at the top of their game, nothing's more deflating than watching a single hole unravel the entire round. That's exactly what happened to world number 1 Nelly Korda during the opening round of the US Women's Open in May 2024. Standing on the par 3 12th hole at Lancaster Country Club, she takes her stance, swings confidently, and sends the ball flying toward the green. But instead of finding safe ground, her tee shot lands smack in the bunker. No big deal, right? A quick up and down should do it. Yet, as she approaches her next shot, it's clear the bunker's got other plans. Her escape shot doesn't quite make it, setting her up for a tougher attempt. And then, as if on cue, the real trouble begins. Her ball finds the water hazard. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, with each splash marking a descent into golf agony. Stroke by stroke, Korda's score climbs painfully higher until, unbelievably, she taps in for a brutal 10 on a single par 3 hole. Watching the top-ranked player struggle so much on one hole was a shock for fans and fellow players alike, and it placed her a painful 12 shots behind the leader for that round. Her final score of 80 was an uncharacteristic number for Korda, who's known for her steady, powerful game. Guess that's one way to make a splash, just maybe not the one Korda had in mind. From one nightmare to another, just a year after his incredible 2019 Masters victory, Tiger Woods returned to Augusta in 2020, but this time, he faced a moment that no one, especially not a 5-time Masters champion, could have expected. Here's what happened. It was the infamous 12th hole, right in the heart of Amen Corner, a stretch that has crushed many Masters' dreams. As Woods lined up his shot, Rae's Creek waited ominously in front, almost daring him to take it on. He took his swing, and the ball drifted left, landing straight in the water. A mistake, but one he could recover from. Woods reset for his next shot, determined to put it behind him. But shockingly, his ball found the creek again. A third attempt? Same outcome. 3 times in a row. Woods watched as his ball plunged into the creek's magnetic pull, with each splash amplifying the tension among fans and broadcasters. On his 4th attempt, Woods finally cleared the creek, only for his ball to find the bunker. After a tricky escape from the sand, he finally got onto the green, but only after 8 strokes. A couple of putts later, he walked off the 12th with a 10, his highest single-hole score in Masters history. Amen Corner doesn't play favorites. Even Tiger wasn't safe from its curse that day. Alright, we move to the next one. So, in the world of golf, you expect to see a lot of wild swings and emotional ups and downs, but rarely do you expect an actual bird, or, in this case, a birdman, to show up mid-game. This unusual scene unfolded during the 2012 US Open, when Webb Simpson was just about to secure his victory. Out of nowhere, a fan dressed in a strange bird costume suddenly rushed onto the green. With his wings flapping and an odd costume meant to resemble a bird, this intruder made quite an impression, interrupting the prestigious event with his strange antics. As the Birdman flapped his wings and pranced around on the green, the crowd didn't quite know how to react. Security, on the other hand, moved quickly, tackling the fan and removing him from the scene. Webb Simpson, known for his calm and friendly demeanor, handled the situation with humor. As the Birdman was taken away, Simpson couldn't resist cracking a joke. Enjoy the jail cell, pal. With that one-liner, Simpson sealed the moment as an unforgettable bit of US Open history. In a sport where quiet focus is key, this random dash of comedy was like a breath of fresh air. Or should we say, a bird in the bunker. Ernie Els faced a nightmare that no golfer could prepare for. A moment so surreal it felt like Augusta itself was out to get him. It was the very first hole of his round, usually a time for setting the tone and finding a rhythm. Els, a seasoned veteran with major titles under his belt, approached the green with confidence, ready to open his tournament on the right foot. But then, something unusual happened. He lined up his putt, likely visualizing an easy start. But as his putter made contact, something felt off. His ball rolled toward the hole, only to veer just wide. Surprised but undeterred, he set up again, expecting a simple tap-in. Yet the ball missed again, and again. Each attempt seemed to defy him more, turning a straightforward putt into a slow-motion disaster. By the time he finally sank the putt, Els had taken an unthinkable 6 strokes just a hole out, recording a painful 10 on that opening par 4. A brutal sight for fans, as the dreaded yips seemed to grip him in front of Augusta's quiet, watching crowd. Moral of the story? When the yips show up, even a champion like Ernie is in for a wild ride. All right, we move to the next one, and we're at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. The one tournament where golf meets a party and where rowdy fans can become just as famous as the players themselves. But in 2018, one fan took it to a whole new level. Jordan Spieth, known for his razor-sharp focus, was lining up his shot, shutting out the typical cheers and buzz around the Phoenix Open's infamous 16th hole. But then, out of nowhere, one fan, clearly deep into the party part of the event, started heckling. His slurred shouts loud enough to break Spieth's concentration. As Spieth settled into his backswing, the fan's drunken voice grew louder and more obnoxious, stumbling into a territory that was less cheering and more cringeworthy. The heckling became so relentless that security finally had to step in, escorting the very intoxicated fan out as he staggered, shouting on his way. It was a relief for Spieth and everyone around, though the fan's sloppy exit was a hard-to-miss reminder of what too far looks like, even at the Phoenix Open. It's 2018, and Sergio Garcia, the defending Masters champion, stepped onto Augusta's 15th hole with confidence, hoping to carry on the magic from his 2017 victory. But in a matter of moments, that confidence would crumble, and his round would unravel into one of the most jaw-dropping meltdowns Augusta had ever seen. A scene so painful that fans couldn't decide whether to watch or look away. So, what the heck happened? Well, the 15th hole, known as Firethorn, is usually a chance for birdies, maybe even an eagle. But it comes with Augusta's trademark risks. Garcia's first approach shot looked good, until it spun back, trickling down the slope and plunging into the water. Frustrated but undeterred, Garcia dropped another ball, determined to make it count. He took his shot, and yet again, it hit the green, only to roll back down and splash into the hazard. Now visibly rattled, he tried a third time, then a fourth. Each time the ball seemed cursed, stubbornly finding its way back to the water. By the 5th shot, it was no longer just frustrating, it was painful to watch. Fans around the green shifted uneasily as one of the best golfers in the world battled a hole that had turned into his worst nightmare. Finally, after 5 balls had taken the same watery fate, Garcia managed to land one safely on the green. But by then, the damage was done. A series of agonizing putts later, he tapped in for a staggering 13 on the hole, tying the record for the highest single-hole score in Masters history. It wasn't just a bad hole, it was a complete collapse on the very course where he had been a hero just a year earlier. Sliding into our top 3, and here we have an absolute embarrassing moment from the 2019 PGA Championship. A reminder that sometimes, it's not just the golfers who steal the show. It was a tense moment on the 16th hole at Bethpage Black, with players battling the notorious course. But suddenly, all eyes turned to the edge of the green, where one fan, clearly enjoying a few too many drinks, wobbled a bit too close to the action. He tried to steady himself, but in a clumsy misstep, he lost his balance and toppled straight into a greenside bunker. Laughter rippled through the crowd as the fan tried to climb out, only to slip and slide down. With each failed attempt, the fan's alcohol-fueled determination grew, and he continued his struggle, slipping, sliding, and trying again, much to the crowd's delight. Finally, after a few more tries and growing cheers from onlookers, security stepped in, helping him make a not-so-graceful exit from the bunker. Moving on to number 2. We're back at Augusta National, known for its challenging holes and unforgiving water hazards, but for Japanese golfer Tsuneyuki Nakajima, it became the site of one of the most famous collapses in golf history. The par 5 13th, with its notorious Rays Creek, was a challenge Nakajima aimed to conquer with a routine approach. But as his ball found the water, he faced a choice: take a penalty and move on, or try to recover his shot. Nakajima went for the latter, and that's when things went south. His first recovery attempt failed, sending the ball back into Rays Creek. Frustrated but undeterred, he tried again and again. The more he tried to free himself from the hazard, the deeper he sank into Augusta's trap. Each swing only led to more penalty strokes, and the once manageable recovery snowballed into a full-blown disaster. By the time he finally escaped Rays Creek, Nakajima had taken an excruciating 13 strokes on the hole, tying the Masters record for the worst score on a single hole. The unforgettable scene, where his persistence clashed with Augusta's brutal defenses, earned him a nickname that would haunt his career: the Sands of Nakajima. Once again, Augusta had claimed another victim, etching Nakajima's name into the history of Rays Creek forever. And finally, we're at number 1 of the most embarrassing moments in golf history. We're in 2011 and Kevin Na approached the par 4 9th hole at the Valero Texas Open with confidence. But within minutes, he'd find himself trapped in one of the most brutal, unforgettable nightmares a golfer could face. What followed was a humiliating battle he would later call his walk of shame. So, here's what happened. Kevin approached the 9th hole, a par 4, ready to make his shot. But as his club connected with the ball, his tee shot veered wildly off course, diving into the tangled Texas rough. A small misstep, perhaps, but nothing a pro like Kevin couldn't handle. He walked up to his ball, nestled deep in the brush, determined to play his way out and move on. But as he took his next swing, things went from bad to worse. His club snagged on branches and tall grass, causing a mishit that barely nudged the ball forward. He repositioned and swung again. Another tangle in the rough, then another. Fans around the hole watched as Kevin hacked at the ball, but each shot only seemed to dig him further into trouble. You could see the frustration building on his face, but he wasn't giving up until the fateful moment when he swung at the ball, missed, and realized it was still in midair. To avoid a penalty, he had to take another swing at it, but his struggle only seemed to intensify with each shot. At this point, he'd lost track of his strokes and called his caddy over, asking for help to keep count. The crowd, normally reserved, was now murmuring and gasping, watching in disbelief as his shot count kept climbing. Even Kevin could feel the surreal nature of it, battling not just the course but also the creeping sense of helplessness as he continued to hack his way through the rough, 1 inch at a time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Na got the ball back in play, moved it down the fairway, and made his way toward the green. But by then, the damage was catastrophic. When he finally holed out, his score on that single par 4 had soared to an unthinkable 16 strokes, the highest in Texas Open history and one of the worst ever recorded on a par 4 in PGA Tour play. Afterward, Kevin jokingly called it his walk of shame, bringing humor to an experience most would want to forget. Oh, and now you're here. We have another great video right in the middle of the screen. Enjoy!